Welcome to Doc Christine's in-depth video for Heartburn Week. Today I'm talking about heartburn, heartache and stomach ulcers. What is the real cause and how you can fix it with natural means. Now, it is part of my stomach series, What's Up with My Belly. And you will get more of that on my YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. Now, it's important to note that this video is intended for educational purposes only. For individualized medical advice, please consult your family physician or other healthcare provider. Now, welcome to Doc Christine, which is myself, Dr. Christine Sauer. For those who don't know me, I'm a German-trained and board-certified conventional as well as naturopathic physician. I'm a dermatologist, allergist, family physician. I'm also author of several books, speaker, radio host, and a teacher. I love to educate people that are interested to hear the truth. I'm now working by choice as an ultimate performance and health coach out of Nova Scotia, Canada. Now that sounds like I always have been successful, happy, healthy, but nothing could be further from the truth. 20 years ago, I had to give up my successful dermatology practice because my back gave out. I overworked myself without caring for my body and my mind. I then fell into a deep depression, which wasn't helped by my ex-husband committing suicide. And I took the big step of using the immigration papers we had and coming to Canada with my two then teenage sons. What follows is a deep depression, suicide attempts, anxiety, and a struggle with physical and mental illness for over 10 years. Then I found a way to get healthy again, which I now share with my clients and the world. Actually, look, this is me in 2005. And you might not recognize me now. I was depressed, I was tired, I was in chronic pain and I didn't know what to do and where to go. I was afraid I would feel crappy like this for the rest of my life. Now, 11 years later, and that's already 13 years later now, I found my passion again. I love to help people, I always did, so I'm doing that again. I feel happy and I resolved my back pain as well as my mental illness. In the course, I also had stomach problems. Some of you that searched for me on YouTube might have seen that in 2006 I chose to have gastric bypass to actually reduce the weight. Now, this is not an easy decision and not a quick fix. You have to work at it every day to keep the weight off. It is hard, especially if you take medications that increase your appetite, like myself. 2018, I'm married to a wonderful man from Nova Scotia. For 19 years, this is as at our 19th anniversary, and we are gardening, and we have backyard chickens. And we had two little dogs. One just died, so we still have one little dog. Gets started with the gut. As many of you will know, and I'll switch my picture off so you can see the whole background. The Greek philosopher and physician Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. How right he was 2000 years ago. And we got that over the course of history. What you will discover today in this webinar are the real causes of heartburn and stomach ulcers. Now, is it the acid, the bacteria, or the stress? How to avoid heartburn, stomach ulcers, and sleepless nights because of it. The truth about stomach pills, and I will show you natural ways to improve and heal heartburn and stomach ulcers. Now, we all know our digestive system starts in the mouth. It starts in the mouth and then it goes down the swallowing tube, also called esophagus. Then the food goes in the stomach, where it gets more or less digested. And from there it goes into the duodenum, in the small intestine, then in the large intestine, and then it comes out as feces or stool out of our anus, and the medical term is defecation, or we just said donating to the toilet bowl, or having a bowel movement, or pooping. Now, there's accessory organs that play an important role in digestions. For example, our salivary glands. There's glands all over. There is the liver, the gallbladder, which is about located in this area, and the pancreas, which produces not only the insulin, but also important digestive enzymes. And I'll go into that way more in my structures and functions of the digestive system, which I'll record for you later. Now, it is important for heartburn to know a little bit more about the anatomy of the structure of the esophagus, the swallowing pipe, and the stomach. Now, our swallowing pipe is in the back of our windpipe. So the windpipe is up front, the swallowing pipe up back. And there's a little lid that prevents us from inhaling our food by mistake under normal circumstances. There's an upper esophageal sphincter. Sphincter is a ring muscle that closes the swallowing pipe off to prevent us from inhaling air and swallowing air. There are several muscle layers all across the esophagus that allow us to swallow even when laying down, or you can even drink when you are on your head. And very important for the stomach function and the stomach acid and the acid reflux is what is called the lower esophageal sphincter, the lower ring muscle that usually keeps the stomach closed from the esophagus to swallowing pipe. So what that does is when the food goes down, it opens, empties it in the stomach, and then it closes back up, so that when we are digesting, the acid that the stomach normally produces does not go back in the esophagus, the swallowing tube. That's how it practically looks. There's the esophagus, there's the diaphragm, the breathing muscle that helps with the functions. There's a pylorus here, which is another ring muscle that prevents the stomach content to go into the duodenum, the small bowel, too fast. And there's different parts to the stomach of layers. There's the outer layer, the muscle layers, and the inner layer of what's called mucosa or epithelium. That's the inner skin of the stomach. Now, for those who are diagnosed with a hiatal hernia, what that means is that part of the stomach go through an enlarged hole in the diaphragm and up in the chest. And obviously that causes problems, and we'll get to that a little later. And you can also see why a good breathing habit, deep breathing in your stomach and training the diaphragm is important actually for your stomach health. So that's quite interesting. Now, many of us see stomach acid as something that causes heartburn and ulcers, but nothing could be further from the truth. Stomach acid is necessary for digestion. Our stomach normally is acidic with a pH between 1 and 3, like soda pop, for example. The stomach acid consists of hydrochloric acid, potassium chloride, sodium chloride, which is different kinds of salts, and others, among them enzymes. The stomach acid production is regulated by different hormones and enzymes, histamine and proton pumps, as well as the autonomic, that's the vagus and parasympathetic nervous system. So that's the system that we cannot control. The stomach acid also kills most bacteria and other pathogens we ingest, and also most probiotics that are not formulated to pass through the stomach acid. It is critical for protein breakdown and digestion. The proteins need the activated pepsin from the stomach acid to break down proteins in the amino acids. Many people that have low stomach acid, and we'll get to that a little later, that is actually quite common, have a deficiency of essential amino acid for that reason. Stomach acid also helps with vitamin B12 absorption. Actually, without it, vitamin B12 gets hardly absorbed. The stomach itself is protected by a layer of mucus that prevents the acid from digesting the stomach itself. No wonder. Now, what many people do not know is that the stomach acid actually decreases over time in your life. It decreases after you're 20 or 30, it goes down 40%, and after you're 60, it goes down another 50%. So if most of the people that suffer from heartburn have low stomach acid, why are we giving people antacids? And why do they help? Interesting question. Now, it is very important to understand the role of good and bad bacteria for our health. Normally, we have good bacteria all over the body, on the skin, in the mouth, in the nose, in the stomach, especially the large bowel. The others are too acidic for most of the people. And same, the small bowel is the opposite, alkaline usually, and there's of course bacteria in your urogenital system. Good bacteria keep your immune system in balance, whereas dysfunction, dysbiosis, fosters immune disorders, autoimmunity, allergy, and metabolic disorders, including obesity and depression, and more. I'll have an in-depth video about that later on to explain it all. Now, the role of foods. What are typically named culprits supposed to cause heartburn? Generally, eating too much or too fast can cause heartburn. Spicy foods and spices can cause heartburn. Even peppermint may do it. Alcohol, caffeine, carbonated drinks and soda pop can cause heartburn. Same as chocolate, sour foods like citrus fruits and juices or pickles, tomatoes, and fatty foods. Now those really don't have much to do with each other, do they? Now, very well known is the impact of stress, and we'll analyze it a little bit more. And it is like a big green monster that attacks your stomach. That's a cringe, stomach cringe. Many people report an increase in pain when they are in stress. But studies do not find an increase in stomach acid during stress. So if you get heartburn when you're under stress, why really is that? We'll get to that. But what does stress do? It does alter the movements of the gastrointestinal system. It can cause cramps in the esophagus and imbalances in the critical lower esophageal sphincter. So that's what's really going on. It can increase the pain sensitivity. Stress also changes the blood flow, not just to the stomach and bowel area, but more. And the microbiome, the bacterial of the gut bacteria are changed by stress. It can also hinder the stomach cell regeneration, so that if they are broken down by some accident, they can't grow back fast enough. So the real reason for heartburn and ulcers that we identified is not the acid, it is a dysfunction, a faulty lower esophageal sphincter. That means that the esophagus and the stomach can't communicate properly with each other, and the valve that usually keeps the stomach acid in the stomach where it belongs malfunctions and acid refluxes in the esophagus. So yes, it is acid reflux, but it is not caused by the acid, but by a faulty valve. And as you know, when you have a car and it has a faulty valve and the gas goes out of the exhaust, you don't throttle the gas, you don't take the gas out, you replace the valve. So we'll talk more about that. What all can cause this dysfunction of the lower esophageal sphincter? In rare cases, there are genetic syndromes, surgical syndromes, or diseases of the esophagus, scleroderma, sarcoidosis, that can cause heartburn and ulcers. Zollinger-Ellison is a genetic disease where you produce so much acid that it just is way too much. And that is a clear indication for the modern proton pump inhibitors that are really helpful in these cases. But most of us do not have too much acid. Scleroderma, sarcoidosis are inflammatory or autoimmune diseases. Then we talked about the hiatal hernia or esophageal diverticular, that both lead to a dysfunction of the sphincter, more mechanical. Then of course the big belly syndrome, pregnancy and or abdominal fat pushes on the stomach, weakening the lower esophageal sphincter. The valve between the esophagus and the stomach only can hold so much pressure. So if the pressure in the stomach gets too much, it weakens and the stomach comes, the acid comes up the esophagus and we have reflux and pain. Now, you can't do much about pregnancy, of course, and the abdominal fat you usually can. Smoking weakens the sphincter, as well as an infection with certain microorganisms can actually cause a breakdown of the stomach protective layer and cause ulcers that way. Then there's medications that can cause stomach upset and break down the mucus and also weaken the sphincter. But do not stop any medications that your doctor prescribed for you, because they may be essential for you. And also the sudden withdrawal of stomach pills that you took for a while can cause a rebound effect and can cause severe heartburn. Now, what about those stomach pills? There are different types of classic stomach medications. There's antacids, well known as Tums, Alka-Seltzers, baking soda, even some drink milk, which goes in the same, it's a buffer. It buffers the acid. It works for a little bit as long as the acid keeps down. And if the sphincter is still, the valve is still defect, it will come back. Then there's histamine H2 receptor blockers, for example, ranitidine, cimetidine. Those block the acid secretion in the stomach cells. They work a little longer. You usually have to take them once or twice a day. And they reduce the acid by about 50%, but they do nothing to help with the valve. Then there's others like Pepto-Bismol, which contains bismuth, that might help, and bismuth is actually one of the substances that can be used to kill Helicobacter pylori, that bacterium that is stomach ulcers. Now, very wide use has been of proton pump inhibitors, PPIs. For example, omeprazole, lansoprazole, esomeprazole. Examples of brand names would be Nexium and stuff like that. Anything that ends in OLE or upazole is probably a proton pump inhibitor. Those proton pump inhibitors get rid of the stomach acid pretty much completely. They are very effective because they completely block it for days, the stomach acid. But they don't help with the valve. There are dangers of long-term use of proton pump inhibitors. Impaired absorption of proteins, because they can't be broken down anymore. Impaired absorption of minerals and vitamins, as well as medications. And then there's an increased risk of infections with bad microbes like Helicobacter pylori and Clostridium difficile, which causes bad diarrhea. There's also the increased risk of kidney damage, bone loss, dementia, stroke, heart disease, pneumonia, infections, and probably others as a consequence of the malabsorption. But I want to warn you, do not suddenly stop stomach pills, especially proton pump inhibitors. Talk to your doctor, and if you and your doctor decide you can go off them very, very slowly, or you will get rebound acid reflux. Now, how can we avoid heartburn and stomach ulcers? First, if you smoke, stop. If you can and you're overweight, lose weight, wear loose-fitting clothes to reduce the pressure on your stomach. Find your individual triggers, keep a food and symptom diary, and do deep stomach breathing. Reduce foods and spices and medications that you know will trigger heartburn. Reduce sugary foods and eat slowly and chew well. Manage your stress, manage your sleep, lift up the head of your bed somewhat, about 6 inches, to reduce reflux at night. That is very effective. The best way to do it is to put a brick under each of the feet of the bed on your head and not just put a wedge under your head end, under your pillow. And do not eat or drink anything but water about 2 or 3 hours before sleep if you tend to get heartburn. Because when you lay down and you go to sleep, the sphincter relaxes, and if your stomach is still full, the stomach content and acid may come up. Now there's some foods that have been described to be healing acid reflux. They certainly help, but the general rule is to go with a whole food, plant, predominantly plant diet, and a small amount of good quality animal protein. Now, favors are oatmeal, bananas, applesauce, ginger, some beans, fermented foods if tolerated, for example coconut kefir, raw sauerkraut, poultry, fish and seafood, bone broth from pastured animal bone, fennel, roots and greens, cooked and pureed if needed. Virgin organic coconut oil calms down the stomach, aloe vera juice, slippery elm, but there are more. And it's always important to do a food sensitivity or allergy test, a delayed type allergy test to rule out food allergies, so you don't eat something that might aggravate your system even more. Now, what are other natural ways to improve and even heal heartburn and stomach ulcers? Number 1, in my opinion, drink chamomile tea. If you don't like the taste, want it a little sweeter, add some fennel tea. You can mix them. Drink ginger tea if you like it. I personally get nauseous from ginger. I don't know. Some people get really like ginger. It's very different. Everybody is different, and that's very important to go with your individual body. Now, there's an interesting natural way to improve and heal stomach ulcers that has been done in the proton pump inhibitors much, especially in Europe. Coming from Germany, I of course know about it. They call it a rolling cure with chamomile tea. The way it works, and contact me if you want the instructions for it, you make a few cups of chamomile tea, let them cool down to be nice and a little bit more than lukewarm, and then you have some and lay down, and then you roll on your left side for so long, on your belly for so long, on your right side for so long, and on your back for so long. And then you drink more tea and do the same. So you roll, 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 and what it does, it coats the stomach and the esophagus with the healing chamomile tea. And if done consistently, it has amazing cure rates. But it is a little work, I know that. Of course, there's supplements to improve and heal heartburn and stomach ulcers, like zinc carnosine, astaxanthin, L-glutamine, DGL, licorice extract, deglycyrrhizinated, cranberry extract, picoryza extract, certain probiotics. It's important to choose the right and good quality multivitamins. There's not much of that on the market. Ask me if you want your personal supplement plan. Now, the takeaway of today's main points is heartburn is not caused by too much acid, but by a dysfunction of the lower esophageal sphincter. And if you want to know if you have too much or too little acid, let me know. I'll give you the instructions to test yourself easily. Use classic stomach pills only short term and with caution, except in rare cases. But always follow your doctor's advice. And do not suddenly stop stomach pills that you have been taking for a long while. Use lifestyle changes first, especially stress management, sleep management, lose weight, and stop smoking. If you need help with any of these areas, contact me. I'm happy to help. Avoid individual trigger foods and eat more healing foods. And as always, use natural means to help wherever possible. And I wanted to let you know that especially for you, I've set some time aside to talk to you and create an advanced healing plan for you for free. How do I do that? I begin by listening to you very carefully. Find out with targeted question what your challenges are, what your goals are, what you want to accomplish. And I then use my experience and knowledge, more than 28 years, to design a custom healing plan to get you there. Would you like to take me up on this free offer? If you do, schedule your free call. Click on the link in the description and I'll be happy to help. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, constructive criticism, I'm always happy to hear it. Visit my website, like and share my Facebook page, or send me an email. I'm Doc Christine. I'm dedicated to your wellness